first ever ego death on supposedly 200 micrograms of LSD. Yo, what's up? It's someone that's known one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by Ravn, where he took 200 micrograms of some unknown acid, possibly NBOMe. And here's the full report details. Alright, here we got another report of some tabs that were most likely NBOMe. We covered a few reports like this before, and they often tend to throw the user off pretty strongly, sometimes leading to a bad trip, but at the very least, it tends to be a powerful trip nonetheless. Ravn describes having a type of ego death in this report just to give you an idea, where things do get pretty overwhelming for him. He has many differing hallucinations throughout, while also noting many different signs that this wasn't acid, but some type of NBOMe substance, which can be dangerous, but him and his friend do make it through this night. You'll just see. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. This is my trip report of my first ever ego death at what was sold to me at 200 micrograms of acid, but I believe it was either a different chemical or the tabs were overdosed. I was planning on dropping two 100 microgram tabs at a sleepover at my friend's house. I was comfortable doing the tabs there, and I already done acid 2 times before, once with 100 micrograms at the same place, and once with a little less than 200 micrograms. So I didn't think this would be a trip that would go wrong in any way. I dropped the tabs at about 10 p.m. and laid them under my tongue. I proceeded to play some Modern Warfare with my friend, waiting for the tabs to kick in. It took about 30 minutes before I started feeling the come on nausea, and within 20 minutes, I started having trouble concentrating on the game, and I had to lay down in the bed. I thought that it probably weren't any more LSD in the tabs, and I spat them out instead of swallowing them at this point, because I realized this was going to be a more intense trip than I was prepared for. I remember telling my friend, I feel like Spider-Man before he turns to dust. The places under my tongue where I had the tabs was quite numb. I don't know if this is normal with acid, but this didn't happen on my prior trips. After laying in the bed for what felt like an eternity, but for all I know was about 5 minutes, I started noticing intense hallucinations. It started with small black dots forming everywhere, which soon grew to become hundreds of eyes wherever I looked. There was also many geometrical shapes switching in color. The shapes were mainly triangles. The sudden intense trip was freaking me out, but I knew fighting it would only make it worse, so I tried my best to stay calm and just go with the flow. Only about 10 to 20 minutes after this, my friend and I had to go outside to meet another guy who was coming to meet us. I thought it might help on my bad trip, as I felt a bit trapped in the room we were in, and outside were bigger and had more natural light. No, this was far north and in the summertime, which meant it was never truly dark outside at night. Getting outside felt nice, and the colder temperature was also calming as it was getting quite hot inside. We walked through a small patch of forest before we got out onto a soccer field. I was still seeing black dots that looked like eyes all over my vision, and as we walked outside, I started getting more paranoid. It felt like all the eyes I saw was watching and judging me. I also had a hard time walking, as I felt like the ground wasn't standing still and my body felt less and less like my own. My friend at the time either didn't notice how hard I was tripping or he didn't know what to do, as he didn't do much to try and calm me down or likewise. After we walked through the soccer field, we sat down at a bench inside a schoolyard where there were no other people. After sitting on the bench for X amount of time, I would assume less than 30 minutes, I didn't feel like myself anymore. My body felt numb and weird, and my whole self felt gone. It was at this moment I realized I was experiencing an ego death. Not long after, I also realized my mind was looping. As my friend pointed out, I had already asked 10 times within a few minutes if we're going to meet our friend soon. Neither of these realizations had a bad impact on me, and after we started moving again, I realized I wasn't paranoid or experiencing a bad trip anymore, but I was purely fascinated over this new state of mind I was in. It felt like I was in one of those first-person videos on YouTube, and I was just looking through someone else's eyes. I knew the strong visuals were still there, but I didn't notice or pay attention to them anymore. As we walked to finally meet our friend, I felt like I was one with everything around me. All sounds I heard had a small but noticeable echo, and all the time we walked, my mood and trip quality rose. I kept getting fascinated over the same stuff over and over, but I didn't really mind the thought loop. After we got back inside, I laid in the bed staring at the roof and the visions I saw, and kept getting mind blown and fascinated over the same thoughts over and over again for the rest of the trip. I also had to pee a lot during the trip, peeing 4 to 5 times, and a lot every time within the trip period, even though I didn't drink more than I usually did beforehand. The peak of the trip lasted until about 4 a.m., and after this, me and my friend made some popcorn and played some more Modern Warfare. I didn't feel like I was under the influence of any drugs, but my pupils were still huge, and if I paid close attention, they were still breathing on the objects I saw. My muscles were also numb, and it felt weird still. I went to bed at about 5 to 6 a.m., and the next day I could feel I had many cramps the previous night, especially in my legs, which hurt noticeably much. Other than that, I felt completely normal, except for tiredness, as I only got about 3 hours of sleep at most, probably less as I had a hard time sleeping when I went to bed. I don't know if this was really LSD, or something else sold to me as LSD. Some signs of this is, when I took the tabs, they had a slightly odd, bitter, chemical taste. It wasn't strong and just left a weird taste on the back of my tongue, so I thought it might be the coloring of the tabs or something like that. My tongue felt numb where I had the tabs. I don't know if this is normal with real LSD, but I can't remember if it happened the previous times. I didn't test the tabs. I had experienced multiple cramps during the trip. If it was real LSD though, I really think one or both of the tabs was gravely overdosed, as I have a hard time believing 200 micrograms can cause such an intense trip.